The call of the Hogs can be heard all the way to San Francisco.
You're listening to Pod at the Palace with Curtis Wilkerson on Inside Arkansas.
Good morning, everybody. Happy Sunday. Welcome into the show. Hope everybody is out there doing well, enjoying what's been just a beautiful weekend here in Northwest Arkansas, at least. It's been great. Got to fire up the grill for the first time this spring on Saturday, and that felt good. Just something therapeutic about watching a fire and then cooking a meal on it. Almost made me feel like a caveman. I kind of love it, though. It was a good time. Hey, sorry about dropping the show a couple hours late yesterday morning. That's my fault. Recorded well after midnight, and when you upload on YouTube and you go to schedule it, it automatically tries to schedule for the very next day. And so I just didn't backtrack it. So when I woke up this morning and I saw some people like, yo, where's the pod at? What's going on, man? And I looked and it was scheduled to go out Sunday morning in the spot that this show is. So that's on me, man. And a few people were like, dude, like this has become my routine. I drink my coffee. I listen to the Pod at the Palace. Where the heck is it? Well, it was there. It was just scheduled for the wrong day. That's my bad. I'm not perfect, but it won't happen again. Actually, it probably will, but it's not going to happen today. That's for sure. So anyway, let's see. Let's get into it. Let's just jump right in and see where we're at here. We'll start with a couple updates, I think, with some of the heavy hitters right now in terms of who Arkansas is pursuing there in the portal and who we feel like they might be closing in on. And I think closing in on is the operative word there. It's closing time, folks, for Cal and the Hogs, in my opinion, on a couple dudes here. But we'll get to that. We'll talk about it a little bit, and we'll have a little bit of fun towards the end of the show with some roster building philosophy type stuff, because it's created some great debate in the fan base, whether it's on socials or Discords or whatever that I've noticed. And it's been a pretty good time there. So let's start, I think, with the most pertinent update of the day. And I tell you what, we'll use it as our heavy hitters segment once again, right? And of course, that's presented by our friends over at HD Roofing and Construction. Make sure you check them out, right? Whether it's wear and tear or those unexpected storms that pop up and create some damage or anything in between, we know that HD Roofing, they're your go-to. If you need a little peace of mind with a free inspection, they've got you covered. You know exactly what you're getting when you choose HD Roofing and Construction, which is professionalism, top quality materials, and expert installation for all your roofing needs. Check them out at hdarkansas.com. Our heavy hitter, it's Malique Ewin. Maybe it's just going to continue to be Malique Ewin until he's a Hog, right? But look, he's one of two or three guys here that we're just kind of waiting on. We're getting close to decision-making time, right? It's visit season. All those things are going on. So here we go. Game on. You've heard the name. You know his game, and you know Arkansas's needs in the front court because, well, they don't have one, at least at the center position. Arkansas has been heavily involved. He's rumored to be a quote unquote silent commit. And, it's like my soapbox thing, but folks, silent commit, all that means in the portal is you're still open for business. Right. I mean, it's just true, man. I'm just being honest. I know we love to hear those buzzwords. It gets you excited. But what I take away from it is you feel really good about where you're at, but it's not quite done. And that's how it is with any of these things. It's just never over until it's over. I think Arkansas is the favorite here. I think they're going to wind up getting Ewin. But there are guys not in the portal on rosters elsewhere with signed NIL deals already done to come back to whatever school they're at. And they're getting poached and they're getting tampered with daily. So to me, when I hear like, oh, this, so-and-so might be verbally committed to a certain coaching staff behind closed doors, listen, that doesn't mean a whole lot to me, honestly. Nothing other than you're playing the game from a position of strength if you're the team that has that verbal commitment. So I guess that's a good thing for you. But at any rate, we don't have to rehash the details with Malique Ewin, but we do need to get to the latest update here. Yes, I'm told that Auburn's been making a big late push. They're desperate for bigs. They need to replace Broome. They have the money to do it. And I know some people look around, they see, well, it looks like they're involved with, maybe Keyshawn Murphy, with some other schools there. They've got the big JUCO kid coming in, and I see all that for sure. Like I get it, but they need multiples. They're kind of in the same situation as Arkansas. If you think about it, Arkansas is trying to bring back Trevin Brazile, and they don't have anything at the center position, right? And then on the flip side, you've got a deal where Auburn, I think they're set to bring back Chaney Johnson at the 4, and they don't have anybody at the 5, right? Like, so they don't have like Brooms out of there. I think Cardwell's out of there. So they need multiples too. So just because they're recruiting someone else, it doesn't mean, at least in my opinion, that they're out of the running for a guy like Ewin or anything like that. So there's that part of it. Now, we also know that Malique has an official visit to Arkansas scheduled for Monday. Now, what does that look like? Does that mean he arrives sometime late Monday afternoon? Does it mean he arrives maybe sometime today, late Sunday, and then the visit officially gets rolling on Monday? That's a good question. And it's valid, right? Because it takes, another sleep or another period of time away where he's not on your campus. Cause the sooner you get him there, I think the better, at least. So Saturday morning though, another update there was that Joe Tipton put out the report, confirming what we already knew, which is that Malique was scheduled to be in Fayetteville Monday and Tuesday, but he's scheduled a second visit beginning on Thursday, so a little bit later in the week, to Mississippi State. I have the same vibes with Mississippi State, I think, that I did with Auburn, just to a little bit of a lesser degree in terms of, I know they already went out and got Quincy Ballard out of Wichita State. That's a big get for them, but they've lost Keyshawn Murphy, who they're still engaged with. They've lost Nwoko, the other big guy. Like, they need multiple big men there, so I don't think that takes them out of the hunt. Now, a few thoughts here on where things stand with Malique. Unless he really, really snuck it in, I don't think that happened. There's no Auburn obstacle from the weekend to really be freaking out about. Like, we wondered, because you've got that period of time there, a few days once the visit season opens before he gets to Fayetteville, you're always looking around going, all right, where else could these kids be going? It was like with Ian Jackson, for example, right? As soon as the dead period lifted, you heard, okay, St. John's for Ian Jackson on Sunday and Monday. And then we were immediately like, oh, well, Friday, Saturday, how about Arkansas? Well, how about USC? It turns out that's where he was. That kind of stuff happens. So you have your eyes on it. We haven't heard anything about him going elsewhere. And he's reporting his other visits. So I think you're clear there. So that's one thing. Secondly, I don't necessarily view Mississippi State as a primary threat here. I don't. They just got Quincy Ballard, like I said, and they do need another big, but that pairing of Ballard and Ewin makes way less sense to me than him and Pringle do even. Plus, like Mississippi State's at least attempting to bring back Keyshawn Murphy, like we said, and if they got him, then they certainly wouldn't have a need there. So that's part of it to consider as well. I would say what you hope for here, if you're a Razorback fan, and this very well could be the case, is that this is a visit to Starkville that has been scheduled to kind of keep up the suspense, but there's not really any intention of it actually happening, right? It's like a hat on the table type of stuff. We want to have some drama when we make the announcement kind of deal. And that might be what it is. We're going to find out, that's for sure. I'm of the opinion, I said this, I've said it several times, but if Ewin is all in on the Razorbacks, I just feel like that public commitment needs to happen before he leaves campus late Tuesday, early Wednesday, whenever that would be, right? Because when John Calipari gets you on campus as a transfer, he's serious about you. And so if he's ready to pull the trigger at that point, he usually locks you up, man. So if he gets off of campus without a public commitment, I'll raise an eyebrow. And if he actually goes to Starkville, like if he shows up for that visit or schedules something with Auburn or whatever, like I'm immediately pivoting to, this might not be happening territory. So the next, 48, 72 hours, whatever, are going to, I think, tell the ultimate story here with Malique Ewin. A lot of this is it's all part of playing the game. Negotiation tactics, leverage plays, going back and forth with agents and representation and everything like that. It's part of the game. It is. John Calipari gets that, but I think he means it when he says, and he's been pretty open about it, whether Arkansas has a ton of NIL or not, if that's the only reason you're interested, he doesn't want you. Right. And he talked about it in his little State of the Union address, and he mentioned a lot of things, and come here because you'll get paid a whole bunch of money wasn't one of them. right? I'm not implying that this is the case in any way with Ewin, but I do get the sense here that Arkansas is, I think they're ready to wrap this thing up if it's going to happen. So eyes peeled, right? So, in summary on him, like things to watch, does Ewin commit on his visit? If not, does he arrive in Starkville for his next one or schedule another, right? If he doesn't commit on his visit, do we see maybe a Nick Pringle go public with his commitment to Arkansas, right? He's the other half of the best silently committed backcourt or front court rather in the SEC. Those are the things that would be telling, in my opinion. And then, if he escapes campus without something being officially official, do we hear more on the Eddie Lampkin front, or does Arkansas suddenly become attached to another big man? Anything like that, I think would be a red flag alert on the Ewin front. But until it doesn't happen, I'm operating under the assumption that he's going to call the Hogs here in a couple days. So there's that. Now, Jaron Pierre, he's the other one, right? The latest on him. He is clearly the hottest backcourt target at the moment, with the decision expected at any time. People saw Monday, and I think they just jumped on, oh, he is deciding Monday. But the way it was phrased by David Sisk over at Rivals was he wants to have a decision made by Monday. So we're, the eyes peeled, man. The secret visit smoke that we talked about on yesterday's show, it heated up even more throughout the day on Saturday, right? More people coming out and saying that. It went from speculation and maybe land to, oh, this is something that may have actually happened here, which is huge for the Razorbacks, right? If I was handicapping the race right now for the college destinations, that the whole NBA thing is still on the table. He could also commit somewhere, keep his name in the draft, go through some of those workouts. I know he has one in early May, and then decide what he wants to do. That happens all the time. Stanley Mude did it. Other guys have done it. That's part of it. But if I'm handicapping the college race for him, I would have Arkansas and SMU a step ahead of the other two finalists, Ole Miss and Auburn, based on everything that I've gathered there. And then if we're just being honest, right? We can be honest here. This is a safe space. If Pierre gets the stamp of approval and John Calipari wants him, you would really have to like Arkansas's chances here, right? No disrespect at all. But if you're in an actual battle, recruiting battle with Andy Enfield and SMU, John Calipari's not losing that. He's just not. And sometimes I get irritated, if a guy goes somewhere else and you're like, they didn't want him, or, whatever. They weren't going to meet his asking price, whatever. But in this case, if it really does become if we know that Cal wants to make this addition to his backcourt and Pierre is their guy and they're comfortable with that and they're all in on it, he's going to Arkansas. Okay. And then if that doesn't happen, then my assumption is that they weren't comfortable with it, or they couldn't figure out the role enough to make it make sense, or they're holding out for somebody else or whatever. But if these two are in a steel cage, John Calipari is walking out of that thing the winner. Anyway, it would be an electric addition, honestly, if they can get it done. We would be talking about as talented, dynamic, lethal of a rotation at the 1, 2, and 3 that you'll find anywhere in the country. It'd be kind of crazy, honestly. Just that slashing, the downhill pressure that you can get on the rim with, like guys like DJ Wagner and Billy Richmond. They call him Downhill Bill for a reason, just the versatility of scoring and shooting, that combination there with guys like Carter and Pierre, that'd be nasty. The size that they have, Pierre's he's not a small, he's 6'5", 190, so a little bit leaner. But then Carter, my God, 6'6", he was 220 plus this past season, and he's going to get stronger, cut down the body fat, add some muscle mass. Those two would be monsters there. And then we're talking about just, elite freshman talent and playmaking, and Acuff and Thomas. Man, sign me up. They can figure out the minutes, right? But the antennas are up. The eyes are definitely peeled here on that front, because according to the reporting, we should be getting down to business time here soon with those guys. So let's see. Do we have anything else that we need to hit on before we have a little bit of fun with this roster? Yeah, we do. We actually have another contact to add to the list for Arkansas, right? And this one's interesting because we know right now, in addition to trying to lock down a couple centers, Arkansas has one, and that's assuming he's coming back, which we think he is, in Trevin Brazil, one player at the 4 on the roster there, and so we saw a little bit of an interesting name that popped up on the contact front there, and it's Kamani Hamilton out of High Point. Now, High Point was the real deal. They had a heck of a season. Those guys did this season. They went to the NCAA tournament. If you guys remember that, they might have won 30 games or something. It was kind of ridiculous. But they played Purdue in the first round of the NCAA tournament. They wound up losing by a dozen, but they gave them a run for their money for a long time there. It was a really cool story. I think their coach just dipped to go to Creighton, and he's going to be the coach in waiting for the next year or two until Greg McDermott wraps it up. And so, that's probably a good reason for a lot of those guys to hit the portal, right? But Hamilton is an interesting name here. He's in that 6'7", 6'8" range, 220 pounds. So he's got a good frame on him and put up some decent numbers on an NCAA tournament team. I mean, nothing crazy. Averaged 13.1 points, 4.6 rebounds, 2.2 assists per game. Averaged a steal per game as well. So got it done on the defensive end. Shot 52% from the field, 73% from the free throw line. Can make the three. Doesn't look like it's a huge part of his game. I mean, he's a 30% career 3-point shooter in 3 years. This is a guy who began his career at Mississippi State, by the way. Didn't play much in 2022-23 for the Bulldogs, and he spent the last 2 years over at High Point. He averaged 15 a game last year, but this was his best 3-point shooting season. 28 makes, shot 32.2%. So can he knock him down? Yes. Is that a big strength of his? No, but it's an interesting name to see pop up there for sure. Who else was on that list of teams that have reached out to him? Not bad. Kentucky was on that list. Okay. Cincinnati, NC State, and Will Wade, Indiana, DePaul, Seton Hall, West Virginia, Georgia, Eric Musselman, of course. So some pretty good programs in there that are in the mix at least early. So I have no idea this early if that's something that Arkansas is going to be all over in terms of trying to bring him in there. But anybody we see at this point who could kind of slot in at the 4 there in any type of capacity, you got to pay attention to, right? Because they need to figure something out from that standpoint, whether it's a depth piece or a huge, addition to the roster or whatever, which really makes it a good time for us, I think, to shift gears just a little bit here and get into our final segment of the show. And, over the course of the next couple of days, we're going to tackle different segments of this along with our portal updates and everything, but still very related. I want to just, take a specific piece of roster building every day with the different avenues that Arkansas could, potentially take here and see what we think. Because as I've been told, there's more than one way to skin a cat. And Arkansas's got some choices to make in terms of how they want to flesh out this roster. I think it's interesting. And today, what I want to do was start with depth and what that could look like for the Razorbacks. So it was a major issue for Arkansas this past season, with injuries playing a big role in that. Obviously, the 9-man rotation thing, not the 9-man rotation, but like the 9 playable scholarship guys, is super risky. And we found out exactly why. Would it have worked if everyone, just stayed healthy all year? Maybe. I mean, we kind of saw that vision in the NCAA tournament, didn't we? But man, they could have used an extra body or two, right? Or, just not falling off golf carts or, whatever. But we're not speculating here. Cal has outright said it. Arkansas is going to they needed more, and they're going to have more for this next season. Playable bodies in there. And it sounds like 11 is that magic number. But that could look a lot of different ways, right? It depends on our interpretation of it. So are Isaiah Sealy and Kareem Rattel number 10 and 11? But there's a big difference in those two being 10 and 11 versus 11 and 12 or 12 and 13 on the roster, Personally, I mean, I think Sealy for sure as your 10th man, he's a substantial upgrade over, whoever it was last season. But if we're being, serious here about adding super quality depth. And I think Sealy's going to be a really good player. He just might need some time. I'd like to see Arkansas add one or two more capable pieces ahead of that, personally. Am I a greedy man? Maybe. But let's operate with some certainty first. Let's set the table. We know that Arkansas is losing Adu Thero, Boogie Flan, Big Z, John L. Davis, Jonas Adu. They stand a chance to bring some really good players back, but that's like an SEC level starting five. It's out the door here, right? So what do they have coming in for sure? Let's pull it up here. On the returning front, and this is under the assumption that all those guys come back, and at this point, I feel like they're going to. Obviously, things are subject to change, but you got 4 guys who were big pieces of what you were doing last season. So important, that retention. DJ Wagner, Carter Knox, Billy Richmond, Trevor Brazil. I like it. A backcourt piece, a couple wings, a stretch forward. Cool. That's a good starting point. Your newcomers, right? I mean, we know that Arkansas is immensely talented incoming freshmen. Darius Acuff, Malique Thomas are the 2 guys in the backcourt that headline that. And sometimes I think we get so caught up in portal season that we might overlook the type of contributions that guys like that can make. They're going to be big pieces of the equation, folks. And then Isaiah Sealy and Kareem Rattel, a little bit more in the periphery. Now, Sealy's a top 100 prospect. Okay. So I'm not trying to disrespect the man at all. Arkansas has brought in, much lower rated, less coveted prospects who wound up playing early. So you never know what that could look like. Rattel, he's just, he's really an unknown. And based on the tape that I've watched, I feel like he's got a lot of potential as a kind of a playmaker at the 4, but he strikes me as a guy that's going to need some time to adjust. And I mean, there's also been rumors that he might be looking to redshirt or whatever his first year. I don't know if that's going to wind up being a thing or not, but is that really what you want to count on to enter your rotation if one guy goes down? You know what I'm saying? So let's put together a couple hypotheticals here and see what we think. Not going to go crazy or anything like that. They need to add the top 5 guys available in the portal or whatever. We're not going to do that. Although if they wanted to, they could. They've got the money for it. But let's do this operating. Like we'll consider needs and what we know about the current roster makeup, and go through a couple options here. Now, the for sure needs, I think. Actually, let me pull up I did a little mini depth chart here. There we go. So you can see it here. The for sure needs, multiples at the center spot, shooting, right? Because that's something that they've lacked significantly. And, probably a 4-man of some type who we just talked about. Would they go, like, if we're getting to 11, would they go with just 9 dogs like last year? And are they comfortable with Sealy and Rattel being 10 and 11? Maybe. I wouldn't be, though, if I'm just being honest. And let's operate under this assumption here, that they're going to add the guys who we think that they're going to add, or they stand a chance to add. Now, obviously, that could change, and it could change very, very quickly here based on everything we just talked about at the top of the show. But these guys kind of fit needs, so we'll go ahead and slot them in hypothetically here, see what it looks like, and see what they would need from there. So we're talking an addition of Pierre, and then the 2 guys we've been talking about so much at center in Malique Ewin, and then Nick Pringle out of South Carolina. So to me, when I look at that those 9, I mean, it looks pretty solid, folks, but I do think it's vulnerable. A piece away, maybe. So if you're, especially, I mean, if you're not comfy with, Kareem Rattel as your backup 4-man, and I'm not, what do you want to add there? And I've heard some people talk about, like, well, to make it work with that big backcourt, that logjam that you have there, maybe you could have Carter Knox play 10 to 15 minutes at the 4. Well, you could, but you're also bringing him back to develop him for the NBA and get him going. And, like I would rather see him play more at the 2 than at the 4. I mean, he could do it And you could run some 4-guard lineups that would be nasty. And if they wind up getting Pierre, we'll talk a lot about that. But that's not something I would really rely on a game-to-game basis. That would be like a matchup-dependent thing for me personally. So what would you want to add there alongside Brazil to flesh it out a little bit more? I think it needs to be shooting personally, or maybe a body that can, kind of swing between the 4 and the 5 even. Maybe a Thero mold, an athletic defender with some versatility. I'm not saying somebody as good as Thero was. There might not be anybody out there available, but that type of player, right? You could go, if you got 9 dogs right there, you could just add a 10th. It figured out with minutes, and then have Sealy and, whoever else just kind of waiting in the wings in case you need them. And, then Calipari, he might be in a situation there where he have to do the thing of, I don't want to have too many mouths to feed. I don't want pouty faces at the end of the bench. Like, you might have to get creative, or somebody just might not play as much as they want to play. But man, you be deep, you be loaded. Like, who would fit that mold? Especially, if you have like a kind of a natural spot there alongside Trevin. That's where we're talking about Jameer Watkins out of Florida State, Darion Williams out of Texas Tech, guys who are in the draft process that you'd be able to hold off a spot for. Like, maybe this is just what you roll with. And then you get a few weeks down the road here and everybody spent all their money. And all of a sudden these guys realize, yeah, maybe I get drafted in the 2nd round or something. But if I come back to school, I could really make bank. And then you're one of the players in that game. And that could be the piece that sets you over the top. You know what I mean? Like, if Arkansas was to add a guy like a Watkins or a Williams or whatever, I don't think that's a pipe dream. I don't. Teams do this. They go out and get really good players and they figure it out. But wouldn't that give you, kind of the Final Four feel of a roster that we've been talking about wanting? You got the Hall of Fame coach. You got the NIL money. Now go get the dudes on paper. Add one of those guys to this list that we have up on the screen right now. There would be no one piece away conversation to be had, in my opinion, at least. So you could go about it that way, or you could supplement that. You could say, all right, we're really comfortable with these 9 guys, right? And for those who are listening instead of watching, Acuff and Wagner, Thomas and Pierre, Knox and Richmond, Trevin, Malique, Ewin, Nick Pringle. If you look at those 9 guys and say, yeah, those are our dudes, but we got to have some help and we don't want to piss anybody off. So can we add a couple pieces who would, have to fit that? Well, I'm capable of helping this team, but I'm also just happy to be here. I love the logo kind of guys. And I've used the example before, but like an Ansley Almanor, I got to give Mark Pope a ton of credit. I don't like doing that, but I have to, for making that addition, because Ansley Almanor was like their 11th, 12th man going into the season, and wound up playing a huge role for him because of injuries and everything. Nothing crazy, but just a veteran, tough player, good dude, good presence in the locker room, corner 3 specialist. It really worked for him. It did. And I would not be upset at all if Arkansas was able to add a piece like that. So we would have to have a willingness to be a little bit more accepting of role players and what that looks like, right? Because the other 9 would seem to be pretty locked into the heavy minutes there. So who would fit that mold? I mean, we just talked about Kamani Hamilton, High Point. It's kind of a similar situation, honestly, to Ansley Almanor. A low major, had a really good year for a team that made the NCAA tournament and everything. So got some experience, wants to come play for a big program, understands, the grind, has been living the grind. It actually makes some sense. I think it would be a nice pickup. The more I really think about it here, I kind of like it. So that's one I think that could make a little bit of sense for Arkansas there. Another one, and I don't know if he would be really necessarily willing to do this, because I think he just tried to do it at North Carolina. It didn't work out for him. But what about Cade Tyson? You guys remember that name? Because he was at Belmont for a couple years, and he was one that we had on the big board last offseason. Really good at Belmont. His first 2 years there, he averaged well into double figures both seasons. knockdown 3-point shooter. In fact, last year, in 23-24 at Belmont, the dude made 83s and he shot 46.5% from three. He was 85% from the free throw line, averaged 16 points, averaged 6 rebounds per game, 6'7", 210 pounds. So he would kind of slot in okay as a, another stretch four that could complement a guy like Trevin. Now he went to North Carolina this year. He played in 31 games for him. He was back into the rotation. I mean, he averaged about 8 minutes per game there. Didn't do much, 2.6 points. So you could look at it and you could say, well, was he a bust? Like, was he not built for a higher level, or was it just a horrible fit there with Hubert Davis and North Carolina? Because one thing we know the dude can do is shoot. And from everything I've gathered, he was a guy who really, I think, did a good job of accepting a role and being a good teammate. And those are all things you would need there. Like, he's already done that. He's lived that. Now he would be on a better team, frankly. He had some moments early in the season. I know he had a double-digit game against American, which, whatever. I mean, it's a low major, but he did. And he played a good amount of tick in some certain games there. He had 23 against LaSalle in one of their final non-conference games. Played 21 minutes in that one. And then it was just quiet for him, throughout the course of ACC play. And I think they were figuring some things out with, guys like Powell who were playing a little bit more for him. And they were going with smaller lineups and trying to get Vin Allen Lubin and Washington going and Jalen Withers out there. So it was a tough situation for him. But that would be one that might be kind of interesting to me. So then, if you slot a guy like Hamilton or a guy like Cade Tyson in right there at the 4, then that gives you a 10th. And then you're thinking, okay, Sealy's the guy who could, kind of rotate in there at the wing if you had an injury. Got Rattel. Maybe you go out and get a Euro big man that we don't really know about who could be a project for you, or a guy who could, be your third big. Because I really think that is something they need. Assuming you go Ewin and Pringle there. I know that Trevin can slide down and play the 5 for you in spurts. And I actually feel a lot better about that than I did going into last season. So I thought he did a pretty good job with it this year. But wouldn't it be nice just to have another dude, even if it's, like I said, like a some guy from Europe who you bring over and break him into the game and you have him there, a freshman project, big man that you could bring in to help you. I think we mentioned a few days ago that I think there's 4 or 5 in the class of 2025 centers that are, top 150-ish level guys that are still uncommitted. Maybe you get a guy like that just to have for like practice purposes, even really. And those GAs were getting the hell beat out of them this year because they were having to go full practice every single day. And that's something you would probably like to avoid. So if you added one more like that, then you would have whoever you bring in plus Rattel, like you would be able to practice at least with guys in the front court, because they were limited with the GAs because you could only go, 5-on-5 and one transition. Like you couldn't full scrimmage with them, or something. It was like some kind of weird rule that Cal was talking about. That was kind of crazy. So what do you guys think about that? What would you rather see? Because there's been some debate there. Because a lot of us, it's pretty easy to be like, oh, okay, so if you wind up getting those guys, you think you got 9, yeah, go get Jameer, man. Go get Darion Williams. Set this thing over the top. Get yourself another baller, all-American type guy. And then others said, well, that's too many mouths to feed. No, it's going to tick Trevin off if you bring a guy there. It's not going to work. And then others have said, well, but 9's not enough. And so if you feel that way, would you be comfortable adding some of these ancillary pieces that we talked about? Which way do you think is the best way for Arkansas? Because there's something to be said with having the most talent, and there's also something to be said for making it work and having the right fits in the right pieces in the right places and the chemistry, right? You can go either way. One thing we know about John Calipari, he's no stranger to having more talent than he knows what to do with, and for the most part has been able to figure it out and turn it into really good success. But like we said at the beginning, there's more than one way to skin a cat, right? Anyway, getting out of here. Appreciate you guys for tapping in, rocking with us as always. Been a lot of fun, and I think that we're finally getting to the point where we're going to be able to start talking about some good news. And if we're not to that point over the course of the next few days, we're probably going to be to the point where we're starting to really, really wonder what the heck is going on. Either way, it should make for exciting shows. Appreciate y'all. Have a good one. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Find us where you find your podcast. You'll have a good one. We'll talk to you next time.